Hello everyone and welcome to the finals of the losers section of the Julius Baer Generation Cup Division 1. It is Denis Lazavik versus Alireza Firouzja, and whoever wins this will face Magnus Carlsen in the grand final. Now this is the second game of their match, and it's truly an amazing one because one player... or better yet, let's not say anything. Let's just enjoy the game. So, of course, you know Alireza, Denis Lazavik. He is a 17-year-old. He's from Belarus, and he's obviously very strong. He already defeated Amin Tabatabai. He defeated Wesley, so he defeated Nodirbek Abdusatov in this event. And now only Alireza stands between him and Magnus Carlsen and the grand final. So let's see how he does here. He has the white pieces and he opens with d4. We have knight to f6, sorry, d5 in this game by Alireza, c4, c6, and now knight to f3. We have knight to f6, e3, and bishop to f5. We have knight to c3, and now just closing the structure nicely with e6 while the light square bishop has been developed. So the shallow defense of the Slav. We have knight to h4 going after the bishop right away. It is the most common way to treat this. Bishop to e4, f3, bishop to g6, and now knight captures on g6. First bishop to d2 was played, bishop to e7, and now knight captures on g6. H captures, and here almost exclusively, and when I say almost exclusively, I really mean it, queen to b3 is the only move. Puts pressure on the center, also puts pressure on the black's undefended b7 pawn, but Denis played queen to c2, and it has only been played twice before, and only once by a grandmaster in the 2017 World Blitz Championship by Ahmed Ahli, who also won his game. So let's see what he prepared here. And in that game, a6 was played, but here we have pawn to a5 by Alireza, and it is now as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. Of course, he wants to stop pawn to b4, as one always should, and now pawn to h4. Expansion on the king side, we have d captures on c4, bishop captures, and knight to d5 by Alireza. Queenside castles, and now pawn to a4. Alireza wants to play pawn to a3 and create a permanent weakness. So a3, and now knight to d7. We have pawn to e4, chasing away the knight, knight to f6, and now bishop back to a2. We have pawn to b5 by Alireza, and now pawn to d5. Of course, the black king is still in the center of the board, so you have to strike in the center. C captures, we have e captures, knight captures, and bishop captures on d5. We have rook to c8 now. Looks terrible for Denis, but after bishop to c3, it's very hard to find the move for Alireza, and also, I mean, look at those bishops. Those bishops are absolutely magnificent. Sure, you're going to have to squeeze in king to b1, but... you should do that either way. And now I know what you guys are wondering. Is b4 a possibility here? Well, one of the rare cases where it's not. If you play b4 here, then look at this. A captures, bishop captures, and now rook h to e1 check. Bishop back to e7, or king to f8, doesn't really matter, because then, of course, you will also be able to... well, if you play king to f8, the bishop captures on b4 comes with check, so you don't want to allow that. So instead, after bishop back to e7, you will play bishop to e6. And this bishop to e6 move is the critical move in all of the lines that we're going to check, because it's such a wild game. And now you cannot capture the bishop. You capture the bishop, queen captures on g6 with check, and now everything falls apart. You can see that the bishop and queen are doing a very good job here. Also, you lose the rook, and so on and so on. So what you will have to do after bishop to e6 is play something like rook to c7 to defend your knight here, but even that doesn't work. Just bishop captures on d7, and after rook captures, you will play queen captures on a4, and now black is completely tied down. You cannot move the rook as it's pinned to the king. You cannot move the queen because then the rook hangs. You cannot move the bishop, so there's really no move you can play here. You can't even move the king because then you lose the rook. So there's no move for black here. So b4, although a fine idea, does not work here. Queen to c7 by Alireza, and now comes rook h to e1. Here, you should not wait with king to b1. King to b1 is just straight out winning, but it's sort of a move that you don't find against a player like Alireza because you just don't think it's working. Point is that after any move that black makes, let's say make knight to b6 because it's a move you really want to make, again this bishop to e6 move completely shatters black's defenses. Now you either lose material here, or you still cannot capture because of the same idea. And if you play something like rook to d8, which of course seems like a good idea, you want to trade down, then just captures, and rook to d1. First you get in another free move, queen to a8, and now bishop captures on g7. You can play this, you don't have to play this. If rook to g8, you can even play bishop to d4, because now the knight is hanging, so you don't care about your bishop, and black is just completely destroyed here. So instead, after queen to c7, he did not go for king to b1. He first played rook h to e1, which is still okay, but only okay, because now Alireza plays knight to f6. He attacks the bishop here. Queen to e2. Now, okay, this sort of paralyzes the black queen, because queen captures on e7 would happen, and Alireza just plays king to f8. You cannot castle still queen captures on e7, so Alireza goes king to f8, and now king to b1. But now it's not as potent. Alireza goes rook captures on h4, and with this move, Alireza again completely blunders the game, but Denis misses it. He plays bishop to a2, which is a very nice move, but bishop to a5 ends the game on the spot. The queen can never move. The queen has to guard the bishop here on e7, so after we play bishop to a5, where do you move the queen? Of course, you have to move the queen somewhere, and now you kick away the rook. Once the rook moves, doesn't really matter where. Now you have all sorts of nasty discoveries on the queen, like bishop captures on f7, and that's it. If queen to a7, now you can simply play queen to e6, followed by bishop captures on g6, and queen to f7 checkmate. So everything is winning here for Denis. But he played bishop to a2. Again, the position is much, much better for him. But now Alireza does get b4 in. So a captures on b4. And now queen to b7, hoping to bust open the position here. We have rook to h1. So, of course, now you have to react to this. The rook is hanging. Rook captures on h1. Rook captures. And now knight to g8. If you don't do this, let's say you play something like bishop captures on b4, then it's pretty deadly. Rook to h8 check, you have to block, and now queen to d2, there's no move for black. If you capture here, queen to d6 is deadly. If you don't capture, then you just win the free bishop with check and checkmate the black king. And if you just go back, still doesn't matter. Now you go rook h7. You go after the g7 pawn. And after something like knight to f6, you can simply play captures. And I know you guys forgot about our good friend the bishop. Now you win the black queen. Captures, and captures. And captures, and now it's queen against the rook and bishop. Okay, you will have to work for your meal a little bit, but not too much, as queen d7 also picks up the rook. So after rook captures on h1, knight to g8 right away by Alireza. He's much worse here, so he has to be very careful. Pawn to b5. Now b4 is no longer a target. We have queen to b6, and now queen to e5, threatening checkmate, and you cannot go bishop to f6. If you go bishop f6, bishop b4 check. And there's nothing here. If bishop back to e7, then just queen captures on e7, knight captures, and rook to h8 checkmate. A beautiful queen sacrifice checkmate, as the knight is now pinned. So after queen to e5, rook captures on c3 by Alireza. This is how he defends against mate. Queen captures, and now queen captures on b5. So, okay, he comes back into the game a little bit, but he's still down the exchange, and Lazavik, of course, forces a queen trade. Queen to c8 check, queen to e8, and now queen captures on e8. King captures, and now rook to h8, forcing the king into passivity. King to f8, and now bishop to c4. Now he will start bringing his king into the game, and slowly but surely secure more space, and then win the game, as he is up material. So Alireza says, all right, I can't really allow this bishop to just pick up the free pawn, so let's trade pawns. But Lazavik says, nope. Pawn to b3, that pawn will remain there, a permanent weakness. We have pawn to g5, and now king to a2. We have bishop to b4 by Alireza, rook to h5. Now going after the pawn here, we have bishop back to e7, defending the pawn, and now king to b1. We have knight to h6. Bishop to d3, and now king to g8. We have rook to h1, and now pawn to g4, trying to give his knight at least some squares, as the bishop is keeping it trapped there. So, of course, f4, you don't allow it. Now, bishop to d6 goes after the pawn. Pawn to g3 defends the pawn. And now just king to f8. Now, Denis says, all right, your bishop is stuck here guarding this pawn. The knight is stuck here guarding this pawn. Now it's time to really activate all of my pieces and my king. So rook to e1 stops the king from entering the game. Knight to g8 with bishop to f5 going after the pawn. And now knight to f6 defending. We have rook to e3 and now pawn to g6. Chasing away the bishop, bishop to c8, and now bishop to c5. Playing some moves, attacking the rook here. We have rook to d3 and now bishop to b4. And all of a sudden you kind of get this idea that maybe Denis did not play this, as best as he could, because now, okay, the knight has to be here guarding this pawn, and the bishop has to be here guarding this pawn or anywhere on this diagonal. So black will not be playing for a win, but how is white to play for a win? That's also the question. Rook to d4, bishop to c5. We have rook to c4, and now bishop to f2. Now Alireza goes after the king side pawns. Rook to c3, defending, and now knight to e4, attacking the rook and the pawn here. And now you have to play rook to c6. You just have to give up the pawn and then pick up the g4 pawn. But Denis wanted to keep everything in the game. He played rook to d3, but now comes pawn to f5. Now he can no longer capture on g4, but he can no longer avoid losing material on the king side. So this is now really bad. Pawn to b4, he does start advancing his past b pawn, but now Alireza plays knight captures on g3. With bishop to b7, at least now, okay, you will be controlling this diagonal, so when the passed pawn starts marching forward, you have this covered, but not really. Knight to e4, and now all of a sudden, the bishop covers g3 and g1, and the knight is preventing the bishop from guarding g2, so this pawn is definitely becoming a queen. What can Denis do about this? He starts by capturing on a3, but now pawn to g3. We have rook a6 going after the g6 pawn. Alireza simply defends it. King to g7. King to c2, g2, and now rook to a1. He will have to give up his rook for the pawn. We have pawn to g1 queen, rook captures on g1, and bishop captures on g1. And now it's all of a sudden Alireza who is up a full knight. So okay, with perfect play, maybe you can draw this if you can snatch at least one of the pawns. King to d3, knight to d6. Goes after the bishop, bishop to c6, king to f6. With king to e2, bishop to d4, and now king to f3. With bishop to c3, and now pawn to b5. Where there's a passed pawn, there's a chance. Only not a very big one. Bishop to d4. Now, as you have a light square bishop, you stand no chance of overcoming that dark square b6 square. So king to g3, king to e7, and now king to f3. We have king to d8, king to g3, now king to c7, king to f3, and now king to b6. We have king to g3, king to c5 now. We have king to f3, and only now bishop to f6. You have to play this g5 move, otherwise there's no way to make progress, but progress will be made, make no mistake there. So bishop to d7. Now, okay, if you, well, the pawn is defended by the knight, so it doesn't really matter. Knight captures on b5, the pawn is now lost. Bishop to e8 goes after the g6 pawn, and now knight to d4 check first, king to e3, and of course pawn to g5. F captures, bishop captures with check. We have king to f2, and now king to d6. We have bishop to g6, and now pawn to f4. You can even give it up because you still have a bishop and knight against the Baer king, and of course you know that is winning. But let's push it a bit further first. We have bishop to h5. Now comes king to e5. We have king to g2, and now king to e4. We have king to f2, and now bishop h4. King to g2, and king to e3. We have king to h3, bishop to f6, and now king to g2. We have bishop to e5, and now bishop to g4. And unfortunately for Alireza, there is no way to actually checkmate the white king before giving up that pawn for the bishop here. So pawn to f3 check. Now you have to give it up, otherwise you get a queen. So bishop captures, knight captures, and king to h3. And now you have a standard knight and bishop against a king, which can be won. I checked the table bases. Actually, you can win it in exactly 40 moves. With absolute best defense from white. So let's see how Alireza does it. We have king to f4. And also, you will see how it's done. If some of you, for some reason, don't know how to do this, I have made a tutorial on this. It will be the first link in the description below. So if you don't know how to checkmate with bishop and knight, do cover that. King to g2, bishop to d4, and now either force, because of course you know this, you cannot checkmate the king in a light square corner if you have a dark square bishop. So the white king will try to escape to these two squares, and of course you want the king either on a1 or on h8. So king to h3, we have knight to g5 with check, king to g2, and now knight to e4. So the first part of the plan is forcing the king to a corner where you can actually checkmate him. King to h2, king to f3, king to h1, and now knight to g3 check. Now, okay, g1 is taken. Now it's time for the white king to start his journey. King to h1, bishop to c5. We have king to h3, bishop to g1, now taking away the h2 square. King h4, now comes knight to e4, taking away the g5 square. So king h5, if you go down the board, doesn't really matter. You're still going to play knight to g5 check, king h4, and now, of course, king to f4, and the knight now controls h3. So you're going to have to go to h5. So that's why h5 right away. King to f4, now comes king to g6. Of course, you will now try to run away to this corner if possible. So knight to g5, stopping this, king to f6, and bishop to c5. Now the bishop and knight are preventing the white king from escaping. Also, the king covers this. So king g6 with bishop to d4, forcing the king up the board, king to h5, and king to f5. King h4 and bishop to f2 check. The bishop and knight and king now force the white king up the board. King h5, bishop to e1, king to h6, and now knight to e6. Again, it's the exact same maneuver over and over and over. King h5, knight to g7, check. The bishop prevents this, the king covers this, and the knight forces the king up the board. King h6, king to f6, king to h7, and now king to f7. King to h6, we have bishop to d2 with check. Bishop and knight do, again, a very good job. King h7, knight to e6, and he was in this position on move 106 that Denis Lazavik resigned the game. And what an incredible victory for Alireza Firouzja. So from that position where I said it will take you 40 moves to get the job done, it took Alireza 21 moves. Okay, it's still 3 more moves to checkmate, so how you do it is actually after the only move, that is king to h8. One thing you don't do is play knight f8. Now it seems like it's checkmate on the next move, but it's actually stalemate. The white king has no move. So before you actually do this final touch, you have to waste a move. That will always be the case. So you waste the move, bishop e3, and now once king e7, h7 is played, now the knight comes to f8 with check. That's the point. Knight f8, check, king h8, and bishop to d4 will, of course, be checkmate. So very nicely done by Alireza, and as he said, I think he said in an interview after the match, it's the same thing with Alireza. When he was starting out, he was strong, but when he was facing Wesley, when he was facing Fabiano, he would also get winning positions, but then he would just lose. It comes with age, and Denis is 17, Alireza is already 20 years old. So it's quite the difference. And, when you face a former 2800 like Alireza, of course, sometimes you get a little bit nervous. But yeah, Denis played a brilliant game. He had Alireza beaten, and he had him he had him in a lost position for like 30 moves, but Alireza persevered and in the end came out victorious. Which means Alireza will be facing Magnus Carlsen in the grand final that is happening today, and we are in for for a real treat. And we'll see if Alireza will be able to do a better job than in the final where he lost 3-0 to Magnus Carlsen. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Crazier Dave, GuernseyChessFestival.org.gg, Phil Malthus, Jaron Asher, and Rohan Tana for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on this wonderful event until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And for those of you who still don't know how to checkmate with bishop and knight, first link in the description below. See you soon.